Hi, I'm Leif Stevens. Today we're going to be checking out three popular jogging strollers: the Thule Urban Glide 2.0, the BoB Revolution Pro, and the BoB Ironman. This is the Thule Urban Glide 2. There are a lot of reviews out there for the first version of the stroller, but this is the newer 2.0 version. The main changes to the new version are a new handbrake, a larger redesigned canopy, a auto-locking mechanism for when the stroller is folded, added reflectors on the canopy and rims of the wheels, the ability to add more accessories, including a bumper bar. The weight has been increased, and it seems to be priced just a bit higher. I also have the newest version of the BoB Revolution. The old version was the Revolution SE. Then they released the Revolution Flex and Pro, which added an adjustable handlebar. The Flex and the Pro are basically the same, but the Pro has a handbrake. In 2016, they redesigned the Revolution Flex and Pro. The changes included upping the weight capacity to 75 pounds, a easier to use reclining mechanism, a larger storage basket, fully upright seating, some changes to the front wheel, easier rear wheel removal, some small changes to the parking brake, and a larger canopy. The Ironman stroller I have is definitely an older version, 2007 I think. The new version has many of the same updates as the BoB Revolution Flex. I'm mainly using it as a point of reference, as it's the stroller I've been running with up till now. I found a lot of the reviews of running and jogging strollers are written by people who have never run with them and don't buy them to run with. And that's fine. Jogging strollers are great with their larger wheels, they're easier to maneuver, and they're great if you want to go off-road. Also, as I've learned, if your child is older and heavier, a jogging stroller can really be a lot easier to use. However, one of the main considerations for me with these strollers is how do they handle during a run. The Ironman has a fixed front wheel, and the Revolution Pro and the Urban Glide have lockable front wheels. If you're running, you definitely want a stroller with a fixed or locked front wheel. I've put hundreds of miles on the Ironman, so I really know that one well. I've gone on several runs with the Revolution Pro and the Urban Glide 2 to get a feel for how they handle. There's definitely a reason that these are the top choices for running strollers. All three of them handled really well during runs. The Thule is longer and definitely feels a little bit more, sports car-like. The Revolution Pro felt very familiar to me after having run with the Ironman so many times. All three strollers have a handbrake. I live in the mountains, and I find a handbrake to be really useful. It lets me run down fairly steep hills without the fear of losing control of the stroller or being pulled along behind it. The Revolution Pro and the Ironman have a traditional handbrake like you'd find on a bicycle. I find the placement of the brake on both of these strollers to be very natural and easy to use. The Urban Glide 2 has a fairly unique twist brake. I found it a little awkward to use while running, but perhaps it's something I would get used to over time. The Urban Glide 2 and the BoB Revolution Pro both have rear drum brakes. The Ironman has a brake only on its front tire, so if you're running and the front wheel comes off the ground, which happens often because you have to lift up the stroller to steer, then you're not really braking. I've gotten used to it, and it's still better than not having a brake at all, but I really found having the rear drum brakes to be a welcome addition. Having a handbrake is definitely something I've become very accustomed to. However, if you live in a flat area and you don't think you'd use a handbrake, the Revolution Flex comes without a handbrake and it costs less. Another reason you might want the Flex instead of the Pro is the Pro weighs quite a bit more than the Flex. In fact, the BoB Revolution Pro is the heaviest of these three, coming in at a whopping 30.5 pounds. The Thule weighs 25.3 pounds, and the Ironman weighs 23.2 pounds, although the newer version weighs 27 pounds, according to the BoB website. Having done a bunch of research, I knew the BoB Revolution Pro was quite heavy, but I was very curious to see what the difference felt like in real life. On flattish terrain, I really couldn't tell a whole lot of difference. I think the added weight made the stroller feel quite solid, but not necessarily heavy. On hills, I could feel the added weight, but it wasn't as drastic as I thought it would be, especially considering the 7-pound weight difference between the Ironman and the Revolution Pro. All three strollers have a wrist strap, which is something you want on a jogging stroller in case your hands slip off the handlebar or you fall over. On the older BoB strollers, like the Ironman, the wrist strap was attached to the parking brake at the bottom of the stroller. On the newer BoB strollers and the Urban Glide, the wrist strap is attached to the handlebar. I very much prefer the wrist strap being attached to the bottom of the stroller, because if you fall over with your wrist attached to the handlebar, you're much more likely to tip the stroller over. There's no tracking adjustment on the Ironman, but mine goes perfectly straight. Both the Urban Glide and the Revolution Pro have adjustable tracking on the front wheel. The Revolution Pro required a very small amount of adjustment, and then it tracked very well. On the Urban Glide 2, I had some problems. I never got it to track perfectly straight, and I kept having to stop during my runs and adjust the tracking mechanism. And I never found exactly the right place, but I have read a lot of reviews on it, and a lot of people say it tracks very well, so I'm sure if I spent more time with it, I could get it just right, but I did find it a little frustrating. Looking at the wheel locking mechanism, the front wheel on the Thule is locked in place with this blue knob. One thing I do like about the front wheel on the Thule is you can actually lock the front wheel in place facing forward or backward, forward being further in front of the stroller, backward being more underneath it. It's got this little blue dial to set the alignment. On the BoB, you use this little metal lever to lock the front wheel in place. On the BoB, however, you can only lock the front wheel in the forward-facing position. The BoB has this metal dial that you use to set the alignment. The tires on the Revolution Pro also have more tread than on the Urban Glide. The handlebars on the Urban Glide, the Revolution, and the newer Ironman are all adjustable. The older Ironman I have has non-adjustable handlebars, and I'm finding it very nice to have the ability to adjust the height of the handles while I'm running. I do wish there were more height settings on both the Thule and the BoB Revolution. The handlebar grip on both of the BoB strollers is the same. It's a squishy foam material. It doesn't seem like it would hold up super well, but my Ironman is a good 11 years old, and it's actually held up fairly well on it. The material on the Thule handlebars is more dense. The Thule also has a unique shape to its handlebars. They feel really nice and ergonomic when you're running. I think overall, I like the Thule's handlebars just a little bit better. Both the Thule and the BoB have parking brakes on the back. I've seen some complaints online that the Thule is challenging and very stiff to operate, but I didn't really have a problem with either of them. The Revolution and the Urban Glide both have nice padded seats. The Urban Glide seems to have a little bit more padding. All three strollers have side pockets in the cockpit, which are handy for tucking in a bottle of water or a snack for your little one. The seat on the Revolution is definitely wider and roomier than the Thule Urban Glide. The width doesn't look uncomfortable on the Thule, but if your child likes to hold on to a few toys during a walk or a run, like mine does, you might find the roomier seat on the BoB Revolution is just a little bit nicer. The footrest on the BoB is also a bit larger. The Ironman I have is quite old, so the seats are not nearly as nice, but I believe the current Ironman is very similar to the BoB Revolution. One of the best new features on the current BoB Revolution strollers is that the seat can be adjusted to a almost fully upright position. The Ironman I have is definitely more reclined, and I find my son leans forward a lot which isn't overly comfortable for him, but he likes to be able to look out at the world. So I was very disappointed that the Thule seat is quite a bit more reclined than even the Ironman. Both the Thule and the BoB seats recline back, so if you have a sleeping baby, that's nice. The mechanism to raise the seats is very similar on both, and it's very easy to use. This is an area that's definitely improved on the newer BoB strollers. The 5-point harnesses on the BoB and the Thule are fairly similar. I did find the BoB harness a little bit easier to adjust, as it has quick draw tighteners on the belt area. I do like that the strap that goes across the crotch area is padded on the Thule, but unfortunately is not on the BoB. The release button on the Thule is also larger and I think a little bit easier to use. The canopies on both the BoB and the Thule are rated UPF 50+. Although both canopies are quite large, the BoB has the larger of the two. It also has a larger view window. The view window on the BoB is held closed with Velcro, whereas the Thule's window is held closed with magnets. Not really an issue for me, as my son never falls asleep anymore in the stroller, unfortunately. But if you have a sleeping baby, magnets would be a quieter choice for checking on your little one. The shocks on the Thule Glide are definitely stiffer than on the BoB Revolution Pro. However, the BoB Revolution Pro has shocks that are adjustable. They have two different settings for different weights of the occupant. I've also read that some people are having problems with the canopy not staying open on the BoB Revolution Pro and Flex. Both the Thule Urban Glide 2 and the BoB Revolution Pro have baskets underneath. Both are quite roomy. The BoB's basket might be a little bigger. It's open on the top. The Thule's basket is covered and has a nice zipper and Velcro to keep it closed. It also has an additional small pouch on the back of the lower basket. Both strollers have mesh pockets on the back of the seat. With the front wheel unlocked on the Urban Glide 2 and the Revolution Pro, they both become quite maneuverable. They're both very easy to walk with and to turn. The BoB is a bit shorter and a bit narrower, so it might be the easier of the two to maneuver in tight spaces. Both of the BoB strollers fold up by squeezing the release levers on the handle. You then fold the upper half of the stroller down, then pull on this red handle, and the whole thing folds up. There's a little catch on the rear wheel axle and on the wrist strap that can be connected together to keep it closed. On the Thule, there's a little hidden compartment underneath the front of the seat. Behind it is a handle that you pull sideways and turn, and the whole stroller folds up. There's an automatic latch that engages to hold it closed. I think the Thule is a bit easier to fold and unfold. However, it is a lot larger folded up than the BoB. The BoB's definitely more compact. If you have a small car, you might want to measure before buying the Thule, because it is quite long. Both strollers have quick release rear wheels that pop off very easily to make the strollers even more compact. The Thule has these cool blue buttons that you push and the wheels just slide right off. The rear wheels on the BoB also come off very easily. You just push these little metal latches and off they slide. The BoB Revolution Pro is definitely a heavy stroller. You can really feel this when folding it up and carrying it around, especially compared to the Ironman I have, which feels very light in comparison. The Urban Glide is several pounds lighter than the Revolution Pro, but because it's so long when it's folded up, it actually feels a little bit more cumbersome to carry it around. All three of these strollers are really high quality. I think any of them will last a really long time. In fact, my Ironman is proof that they do last a long time. I got a couple of cool accessories with the Thule. The organizer drink holder is quite a neat design. It clips onto this metal bar in front of the handlebars instead of hanging from the handlebars like most organizers do. It's definitely more steady when running, which is nice because I often find my drink spills when I'm using the organizer I have on the BoB. The organizer on the Thule, however, is fairly small compared to the one I have on the BoB. I also got the Bumper Bar for the Thule. It has a little button and it swivels out of the way to load your passenger up, and then it easily clips back in place. I found my son really liked having something to hold on to. The organizer I have for the BoB is actually the Britax version, which, as far as I can tell, is identical to the BoB organizer, but it costs a bit less. So overall, which of these would I pick? If I was picking a stroller for running only, I would definitely go with a front fixed wheel stroller. Having the larger front wheel is definitely useful, and in general, fixed wheel strollers tend to be lighter. I'm very happy with the Ironman for running. If you want a fixed stroller, you might also check out the new BoB Blaze, which is just coming out, as well as their Sport Utility stroller, which is basically the same as the Ironman but with off-road tires. Thule also makes a fixed wheel stroller called the Glide 2. It gets very good reviews, so you might want to check that out. If it were just me using the stroller, I'd probably just stick with the Ironman. However, we wanted a stroller that my mom could use, that our babysitters and caretakers for our child could use, as well as my wife and I when we go on walks. So it really came down to the BoB Revolution Pro and the Urban Glide 2.0. In the end, I'm keeping the BoB Revolution Pro, which is actually a surprise to me because I thought I would like the Thule better, and in some ways I do. However, my son definitely prefers the BoB. I think a lot of this has to do with the seat being a lot more upright and roomier on the BoB. If my son were younger, I might have gone with the Thule, as I don't think he would have minded leaning back as much. But now he's older, and he really loves looking out at the world as we're running. He likes to point out the trucks and the bulldozers and the giant excavators as we pass by. I put both side by side and asked him several times which he preferred, and he kept going to the BoB, so that's the one we're keeping. I am a little bit worried about the higher weight on the Revolution Pro. However, I suppose pushing that extra weight up hills will be good for me. I hope this review has been helpful. If you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe to my channel. I have some links below if you want to check out these strollers and their accessories. I really think both the Thule Urban Glide 2 and the BoB Revolution Pro are really excellent strollers. I really don't think you could go wrong with either of them. And of course, if you want just a good running stroller, definitely check out the Ironman. I'm Leif Stevens. Thank you so much for watching.